I'm Hilda. This is my last semester in the program. Currently, my favorite course I'm in is Digital Preservation with Lauren Bell.
Uh,
And I
so
will
I'll jump.
pass
I
it.
can jump in. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'll
pass it
jump
to Kellen.
ahead. My name is Kellen Amy. I am the president of Source for this year, or for this semester, and maybe throughout the rest of this the academic year. I am in my second to last semester of the program, and I'd say probably my favorite class now is preservation of library and archival manuscripts with Lauren Bell as well. And so, yeah, I think we're kind of at a good spot. I wish, sorry, if we could jump into get everybody to introduce themselves, it might take a little too much time. We have about an hour here, and I want to make sure we have enough time to get enough questions for our speaker. And so, with that, I'd like to just introduce. So, again, I'm Kellen Amy. I want to talk a little bit about what Source is. Source is the student organization for unique and rare collections everywhere. It is the Society of American Archivists student chapter organization here at Rutgers. We host virtual events 3 to 4 times a semester, depending on the number of months, where we will host someone in the archives, collections, um, or library or public history field to come and talk to Rutgers students, mostly of whom are in the Master of Information program, and share a little bit about what they do, why their position matters, and other lessons that they could take away. Our advisor here is Dr. Maria Dalbello, and she will pretty much be joining us throughout every meeting, and would be happy, I'm sure, to connect with all of you if you haven't already in the MI program if you're concentrating in archives and preservation. And so, with that, I will jump ahead into our speaker. Introducing our speaker for this evening, we are joined by Keli Ganey, who is the archives technician for the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania, located in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Kelly looks to tell the story in her presentation today of the railroad across the state of Pennsylvania. In addition to the trains and railroads themselves, the museum that she works in also focuses its attention on the individuals who spent their lives advancing what was once one of the most inventive industries in the country, as well as the materials those individuals worked with, the processes used in their everyday lives, and the impact of railroads and transportation on our contemporary society. Kelly has worked at the Railroad Museum for almost a year now and has held a variety of positions since over the last year or so. This has included work as a lead interpreter at Pennsbury Manor, freelance videography, documentary production, and dynamic research in the fields of public history and archaeology. Kelly has recently published a documentary entitled Finding Washingtonia in relation to the discovery of a once lost refugee colony founded by an American philanthropist during the 18th century, and a related paper, Raising Washingtonia, Rediscovering Greece's Earliest Refugee Settlement with Alex Shahigian and Dr. David Pettigrew of Messiah University and Villanova University. Kelly graduated from Messiah University in the fall of 2023 with a degree in public history and a minor in digital public humanities. And please join me in welcoming Kelly.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be here. So I'm gonna share my screen because I've got a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation. So just bear with me as I make sure this all works. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Hopefully it's nice and colorful. Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
awesome. I love it when technology works. That is definitely a theme of my job, of I love it when technology works. And when it doesn't, you learn how to troubleshoot. So, okay, let's see. Can I? Oh, heck yeah. Awesome. Um, so Kellen did a fantastic job in introducing me, but this is a little bit about me. Like he said, I'm from Messiah University. I would call an unconventional track to this position of getting my bachelor's in history and public history with a minor in digital public humanities. That's where I really got to dive into archival studies, which was awesome. Um, I also just absolutely fell in love with archival work after my time working for the Pennsylvania House of Representatives Archives. Fantastic program. I'll plug them probably a few times throughout this uh, presentation. They do internships and fellowships for both seniors and undergraduate work, but also master students. So if you're still looking for an internship and you're interested in doing a different kind of preservation, like more government-based paperwork, they're fantastic. I couldn't speak more highly of them. I wouldn't have gotten this job without the expertise that I got from them there, which is pretty cool. No 2 days of my job are the same, which is one of the reasons why I love this field. The more you get into this field, the more you'll figure this out for yourself if you haven't already. On a day-to-day basis, I could be working with image orders, research inquiries, digitization, processing, cleaning artifacts, preservation work, a lot more collections stuff, as well as I have an army of volunteers who I have to create projects for, which really helped my load because to do my job successfully, I probably would need three of me. And I can't make three of me, but I've got wonderful volunteers who are willing to learn, who have different skills, and being able to tap into those skills is super important. Wherever you end up, whether it's an archive, library, or museum, your volunteers are gold. They will make your job easier and treat them very well. Um, be awesome to them because they will be awesome to you in return, um, which is pretty great. Okay, so let's dig into it. So, preservation, the physical and digital. So, we have three tiers of artifacts here at our museum for preservation and restoration. We have two-dimensional artifacts, so that's your paper materials, negatives, slides, glass. We have a lot of glass plate negatives, prints, drawings, maps, and then books also fall into that category for us. And that is my main domain. That is what I am in charge of, what I take care of on a day-to-day basis. But I also help out with the two other tiers, which is our three-dimensional artifacts, which we've got small china pieces. I've got some pictures here. We've got small china pieces, small books, models, personal items. We've got medium collections. We've got a bunch of clothing pieces, builder's plates, bells, lanterns, pieces from the train that need to be preserved and they don't want to put back out on display. Specifically, builder's plates. We'll take off the original builder's plate of the locomotives because rail fans love collecting them and will go at any lengths to collect them. We had an issue, I think back in the 80s, that someone tried to steal a builder's plate off a train in our museum. And so after that, we're like, okay, we'll put replica builder's plates on so people can still get the historic value, but then we keep them in a safe and locked environment for preservation's sake. Um, See, I've got some pictures of those trains as well. So these are just a few of the locomotives. These are our third tier of artifacts, which is our rolling stock locomotives, passenger cars, freight cars. These are huge pieces, and they take a lot of time and money and manpower to make them look that good. They don't usually come to us looking this good. We have a restoration shop team. We'll talk about them a little bit more later. Um, but they put so much blood, sweat, and tears into restoring these trains. And I do want to point out the restoration of these trains is solely done from fundraising and grant money. The state does not pay for restoration. Even though we're a state museum, we're split. So we're half state, half society. So your state employees are going to be like your head director, your head curator, that and your head educators. That's kind of like about it, like your heads of departments. They pay to keep the lights on, they pay for maintenance, and they technically own all the objects. However, restoration, preservation, keeping things nice and preserved, that comes down to the historical society and people like me who are paid by the society to make sure that these things are actually preserved for the long run. Um, our methodology at the museum, especially when it comes to trains and preservation of trains, is preserve rather than restore, restore rather than replace, and replace only when necessary. This is the methodology we use not only for our trains, but also for our medium and small artifacts as well. We are trying to keep everything as authentic as possible. But as we'll get into with some of these trains, it's not always the easiest option. So, looking at collection storage, our museum was not built to hold collections. When we opened in 1975, they made two closets for all of our collections, thinking that that was going to be enough. There was going to be a room for books and a room for collections objects, and they are about the size of a janitor's closet, like an average janitor's closet. You are not fitting a fraction of our objects in either of those spaces. So we've had to expand. In the middle, you can see our library. That's half of our library. But it's also our library and archive. So on the opposite side of that back wall in that picture is where we keep all of our images, glass plate negatives, slides, films, all boxed up and preserved is on that other side. This is also our research center, so all of my volunteers will be working out of this area as well. They all have computers and desk setups, all with scanners, so that they can do their different projects that I have for them. Now, in the two opposite corners, that is our archives annex. So that is the rest of the paper collections. So sometimes we'll take in collections of entire people of like we'll get estate collections. And so it'll have all their life papers, their journals, their books, as well as their photos. And sometimes it'll even come with some objects. But we've got archival rolling shelves for our main collections work. Um, but then we've got what we at the museum endearingly call snake coffins or map boxes on the wall there. And it can range between 50 to 200 maps in each of those boxes. One of my volunteers is actually working on cataloging each and every one of those boxes. He's been working on it for ooh, 5 years so far, and he's done maybe a third of the wall so far. Um, so that's something that we're definitely continually working on. And then if you can sort of see this section over are all map drawers, those are all the engineering drawings. Those are the original drawings for almost every Pennsylvania made locomotive. They're in the best condition. They're on linens rather than paper or your typical blueprint. If we don't have the regular blueprint and people are looking for a drawing, usually it's in our engineering drawings. Those are almost all digitized, but they're not made public yet. But it's a weird backwards process. When we started this digitization process about almost 15 years ago now, um, they wanted to digitize the most crucial pieces, which makes sense, but they weren't thinking of accessibility back then. Now we're thinking of accessibility, and so we're looking at, okay, what are people requesting? What do people want? Supply and demand. Let's fill out those collections first, and get those out there for people. Okay, let's see what's next. We also have smaller collection storage, which is we've got some hat boxes up here, and then we also have a bunch of shelves and cabinets full of boxes and shelves of storage. A lot of the boxes that we actually use for objects we make ourselves. So that's a good tool to learn if you're looking at going into archival and collections. Not everything fits in a properly made box. Sometimes you just want to get acid-free cardboard and take a crack at it and make unique boxes to hold things in the most secure way so that they will last for a long time. Okay. Restoring the metal giants of the past and preserving them for generations. So Al Martin, who's our senior curator and our locomotive specialist, he's been there for, oh my goodness, 40 years? Yeah, I think he's been there for almost 40 years. Um, Working on these trains and preserving them. He's seen everything. We love him. He's the best. But one of his famous quotes that I had to add to this presentation for him is, "We are in the forever business, not the quick and easy or the beautification business. Our role is to inspect, protect, and preserve for future generations." So that kind of gives, I think, a better idea of what we're trying to do, especially with these big locomotives. As you can see from these pictures, they come in many states and and we have to do usually a lot of care. Our restoration shop works super, super hard to make sure our locomotives are restored back to their retirement date, not brand new or runnable condition. Runnable condition or brand new, it takes away the historic value of it if it looked like it just came out of a box versus after it's been used. There's something nostalgic to it that especially both rail fans and historians can agree with. You don't want to take that away and make it too new, because then it's just going to be a reproduction. Then why even have the original? Also, it's a lot of time and money to get it back to runnable condition. And if you were to get these locomotives back to runnable condition, you'd have to run them, or they would get nasty real quick again. So we take the medium approach of restoring them to their retirement date, and we do it in such a way that tries to curb down decay, rust, and destruction so that these locomotives can last another 100, 200 years. That is the goal, is that all of these artifacts outlive us. Um, we don't want any reproductions. We take great care to make sure that the original shines through the piece. Um, if we take anything off or make any cuts or take anything out and replace it, it's usually 9 times out of 10 for the safety of both guests and the artifact. Most trains come with asbestos, mold, and rust. Those are the three main things that we are fighting on a daily, and they are all nasty little buggers. If you've ever worked in a collection that has any of those things, you know it's not fun, and you have to take your time and you have to be careful to make sure that you eliminate the problem and that it doesn't come back. Most people tell us, why don't you just slap a coat of paint on it and make it look better? Well, you don't then take care of the rust that's happening underneath, and basically the locomotive will eat itself from inside out. And we don't want that to happen. Um, in the top corner, we've got Al holding a piece of the cab hood on our B60, and we call that in the restoration business Swiss cheese because it is just full of holes. It is brittle. It is torn apart. That the cab is basically the roof of the back of the train. And so it would have been a work hazard if that wasn't removed because if our restoration shop, because we have two full-time employees in the restoration shop. The rest are volunteers, retired welders, um, engineers, bunch of different metal workers will come in and volunteer their time to work on these locomotives. And especially for our volunteers, it's dangerous putting them in situations where the roof can fall out from underneath them or the floor could fall out from underneath them. Anything like that, it's safety first. It must be removed in order to continue work on the train. Same thing with mold and asbestos. Asbestos was typically used as an insulation in trains for the longest period of time. So we have to constantly remove that. Every single locomotive we get is like 95% asbestos, which takes a long time to remove and a lot of money to remove as well. And all that comes back to fundraising. We do a lot of fundraising events throughout the years to make sure that we have the money to continue to preserve these locomotives. We've got Steve Mula welding a piece onto one of our trains as well. He is our he just retired, but he came back to work part-time, but he was our machinist. Only person in the state to be a historic machinist, which I think is pretty cool, and I always will give him props for that. He continues to work on historic railroads alongside our museum. He also operates trains at the Colbrookdale in Boyertown outside of Reading. He runs the Abraham Lincoln funeral replica train in Elizabethtown. He also does some work sometimes in New Hope and Jim Thorpe on their locomotives as well. So we like to try and partner with those historical societies slash active running trains to help them out in best we can, whether that's research and plans or physical manpower like Steve. Okay, digital archives and accessibility. So this is where I come in. This is my world and this is my mission of how can I make our collections more accessible. We've got two public database interfaces that people can access our collections at. DB TextWorks, which is our Friends network, and that's the one we're going to talk about more today because that's more archival based. But we also have the Argus network, which is the state database, the state public database. That is for our objects, and those are more, I would say, object records than an active database in use for people researching something. It's not going to give you much research. It's going to give you more the provenance of the object, where it came from, its history on how we got it at our museum. We have about 300,000 records available currently online on our DB TextWorks network, and we add about an average of 20,000 new records per year, which is pretty awesome. I'm super proud of our volunteers. They've been chugging out records like no tomorrow. They do about between 5 to 7,000 records a month, which is pretty nice. Now, I will say the state is working on a massive database center because their goal ultimately is to have a database where we can house all of our records, both archival and object. But that also includes every other PHMC site so that researchers can access any archive, any PHMC state archive in the state in one location. But you're looking at, so we've got 1.5 million paper materials, 500,000 pieces of media to be digitized, 15,000 3D objects, and about 100 locomotives in rolling stock. And those numbers are constantly increasing. As much as our numbers are constantly increasing, all the other state sites, their numbers are also increasing. Not as much as we are, because we're more of a modern site versus some more of your older historical sites. They don't collect as much, but we all have huge collections, and trying to put them all in one database is going to take a huge software and a huge digital holding space. We think it's probably going to be in the works for probably the next 10 years, tinkering with different things to see how we can hold digital files, and these records all in one place, or if we're going to do more of a cloud network. But that comes with its own debates, as I'm sure you guys have talked about in your digital class. And if not, ask me later and we can get into that. It would be probably close to 30 million records that they would be looking at trying to hold on this one database, which is a lot of data in one space. So our database that we use for scanning is Silverfast 8. I love this software. It came with our scanners and it is amazing. It can scan all types of material. The DPI and clarity is very customizable, so we can do scans at higher resolution, TIFF for preservation purposes, but we can also do low resolution, JPEGs, or CATs for our database. So the images that we put out in our database, which you'll see very soon, is a small low quality picture. So if people want a copy of our picture, they'll contact us for the high resolution copy. So of everything, we hold two copies. I'm from the mindset of you can't have one copy, you need at least 2 to 3, and they need to be stored in separate locations. Because if all the computers burn, I need a physical location. If all the physical burns, I need two digital locations. Um, it just, you cover your bases a lot better that way. Another thing that I really love with this software is you can do a bunch of editing and correcting right there. So like here is an evaluation map that I scanned a few weeks ago, and I was able to color correct it to be more accurate to the colors. Some scanning softwares don't allow you to color correct, and then you can lose sometimes the authenticity of what the colors actually are. I'm not of the mindset of you don't want to overcorrect because you don't want to make the digital item look not like what it is in its original state. I'm somewhere of trying to find the middle ground with that. But as you can see, there's a lot of buttons and toggles and switches that you can play with to make this just right, which is one of the reasons why I love this software so much. Moving on to DB TextWorks. So this is the inside of DB TextWorks. So this is what myself and my volunteers are looking at when we're working on the inside of our database. It's a very customizable database that we're super excited about. So we build our own skeleton within this database to make it searchable by the way that we think researchers will use our database, not in a traditional database sense, like a past perfect or an archive space. GB Textworks works really, really well with our collections because we're a unique type of collections. Most people are going to be searching by railroad, by decade, by photographer, by material type. They're not going to be searching by donor name or collection name or a session number. Um, I find that databases that use those as their search key functions is so frustrating trying to do research on. So I've been trying to move us towards finding terms that people will actually use. So on the screen, the big screen that says Combine DE DB query, that's the first screen that would pop up if I was looking to find a type of collection. In this query, I ran a database scan for all Miller negatives in the Miller collection. So basically, I scrolled down to collection, I typed in Miller negatives, hit run. I got 1,580 hits of records that say Miller. In that, then I was able to specify the negatives and bring that down as well. So that is what that second panel is, that big scrolling panel. That is every single record, file by file, down in the text swings. And then the small, where's my cursor? This small square is the actual record itself. Now, the record itself, all of these names are searchable. So if somebody was to type in Reading Company, steam locomotive, ESM neg number 238, all of those things, the computer will program to coordinate as hits. Um, so that's good. You can be either super, super specific in what you're looking for and get what you need, or you can be super general and then weed it down based on what you think you need. Now let's take a look at what it looks like from the online perspective. So this is what you would see if you went onto our website to actually do research on our database. So I typed in Miller negatives, and these are everything that as you can see, the highlight of the terms, it searched for negative and it searched for Miller. Those are the two things that it searched for during this run. Now, if I wanted to, I can narrow it down by material type, decade, collection, subject, railroad, or place. Now, as you can see on the records, now it shows you the title, which is here, and then these are all the other little files that we just filled in show up here. So it's very similar on the outface as it is on the interface, which I personally like. But then also, it shows the image. So if there is an image connected with the record already, it will show up. And people can make that bigger. They all have a watermark on them, so if people do download them, they will have Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania on it. That was something I had to implement because they didn't realize how many of their images were being stolen by rail fans, because rail fans will do whatever they want. Love them to death. They're great, but they will do anything by any means to get what they want. And so adding a watermark like that is just another protection for our collection as well. And so with that, if people wanted to download one of these images, they could either contact me directly through our database, or they could go onto our main page and fill out an archival order form, and then I would connect with them and walk them through the steps of what that looks like. Okay, so our mission at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania is to preserve, interpret the Commonwealth's rich railroad history by collecting, preserving, and displaying significant artifacts and rolling stock to educate the public about railroads' vital roles in building the nation and shaping daily lives, as Kellen said a little bit earlier. Um, that is really at the heart of what we do, what I do every day is that I want to make sure that all the materials under my care are preserved and that they're preserved way past beyond when I exist. Um, I want to also be able to interpret these things. So when people call me on the phone or ask questions or email me research inquiries, I can interpret these artifacts. I can tell them about these books. I can tell them about the maps or the locomotives. And so that every interaction I have with somebody, hopefully I can interpret the best to my ability so that they take away something educational. Collection, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but kind of before we got started of accessions and donations. We get offered donations all the time. And the main reason for this is because railroad stuff, memorabilia, is mass produced. Because it's mass produced, we usually have it already. Especially being around for 50 years at this point, we've collected a lot of stuff. And so with that, is a very careful and delicate balance of weeding through what we can accept and what we cannot accept, and then doing that in a very nice, gentle, and professional way. Because a lot of people, 9 times out of 10, I'm getting people who are cleaning out relatives who have passed away or family friends who have passed away who were rail fans and collected all these things, and they're very important to them, and they want them to be preserved and in a place that they deem is very important. And they see our museum as very important, which I greatly appreciate. And I always want them to know that, yes, your artifact is important. However, I do have 500 of the same kind of ticket from the same era, and so therefore cannot accept this donation. But what I always do is I always have a list of a bunch of other institutions where that they can try to donate to. Same thing with books. Lot of railroad books out there. I already have like too many and like duplicates too many of books. And so one of the things I have on the list is for people to donate to their public libraries. Like if I already have two of these books, some public library might not have that book, and just you putting that into your public library and donating that to an institution like that or school districts as well. I always recommend those. You're then planting seeds in the next generation of rail fans. If you want this love of trains to continue, you need people to still be concerned about them and to like them. And one way that kids do that is by reading. And we need to make sure that we have the materials for them. Not every kid is going to think to come to a museum to read a book. Their first stop is probably going to be their school library. Their second stop might be their public library. And those institutions need books now more than ever. And so I always love trying to redirect people to that. On this page, I also put a small picture of our staff on there. I love our staff. I'm very, very blessed and lucky to work with such a fun group of individuals. Um, and in our staff picture, we don't have everybody, but we have a good chunk of our visitor services team, our educators, our gift shop managers, our director, our curator, our archivist, um, our events and volunteer coordinator. We could not do half the things we do at our museum without her. She finds volunteers, she organizes the schedule for them, she does the events for fundraising. We love Liz. She's in the white shirt and blue jeans. Love her to death. She's an awesome person. Um, let's see, what else do I have? I think that's it. Yeah, so we are at the question portion. So with that, I'm going to I might leave this up. Um, but if anybody has questions, Kellen, however you want to do that, I'm ready
Mhm.
to answer.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a nice silent
Oh,
clap for Kelly. Thank her for joining us today as we move into our Q&A portion of our meeting. I have a bunch of questions listed out, but I did see Ashley, you had sent a message initially about why they were called snake boxes. Kelly, if you wanted to touch on that before we go forward.
yeah, sure thing. So I had never heard anybody call them that before started working there. Um, One of the volunteers, he's since passed at this point, but he nicknamed them snake coffins because they are very long and narrow boxes. Um, and all of the maps and drawings are rolled up in very like tight, tiny tubes or really thin tubes. So they kind of in a way resemble a snake, I guess. But the first time I heard that, I was like in the middle of like reaching into the box and I yanked my hand out and said, "What?" Because I thought she meant that there were snakes in there, and she's just like, "No, no, the drawings are the snakes. There's no snakes in here." But that was, yeah, it's a fun, endearing term, not as much of a professional term, but You'll definitely have your own quirks and terms for different things you find in this field that just makes sense.
Sure, definitely. If anyone else has any questions, I could just leave a few seconds right now. You could just jump in, unmute yourself, whatever. If not, we could go ahead. So, if anyone has any questions.
I had another quick question about the boxes because I don't believe I've read or heard from anybody up until this point about making their own boxes before. Is this your first archive where you've had to do that? Was this new information to you as well?
No. So it's funny. I've worked in three archives now, and each one of them I've had to learn how to create my own boxes in some shape or form. Because the boxes that are mass produced or that you're buying, um, don't always fit every object or collections of objects you have. For us, especially with how many weird objects we have to make our own. One of our one of the things I learned first, and this is at the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, for books that have red rot on them, to isolate them from other books, is to make them their own box, honestly. And you can do that one of two ways, either taking a large legal acid-free folder and cutting it in a special way to basically fold it like a package, tie with an acid-free ribbon, and then you're done. It's like Christmas morning. Other times you need something a little bit more sturdy, and so I then recommend blue acid-free cardboard. It's like cardboard adjacent because cardboard's super acidic. But we actually have a box bender machine in our basement so that we can actually cut and bend the box to however we need for whatever we need. So we actually have a box that we recently just made because we got in a medical set. And so with that had a bunch of little tools, and they're just like they're weird shapes and sizes. And so we made a like a small medium box, and then we made almost kind of like little walls within the box to hold the pieces in there. So if you picked up and moved the box, none of the artifacts moved in it as well. That's something you definitely, I feel like, will learn on the job, more than getting any kind of professional training in it. It's very similar to like wrapping a Christmas gift for the first time. You get better with time, you learn how the paper moves, you learn different box sizes, and then at one point it just kind of becomes second nature. All right, I see we have
Awesome.
another question.
Yeah, Kelly, you can answer that.
Okay. Wide scope. How do you determine what? Ooh, that's a good question. How do you determine whether something is within the museum's domain? Do you have any interesting examples or case studies? Yeah. So one of the main ways that we try to determine if something, so looking at our collection plan, um, it has to meet certain criteria. It has to, the object has to relate to Pennsylvania or a railroad in Pennsylvania or a Pennsylvania Railroad adjacent. So, for instance, like we do have some stuff from other railroads outside of Pennsylvania, but it's because Pennsylvania railroads eventually connected with them as they crossed state lines, if that makes sense. In certain aspects, um, we've been trying to cut down on those materials because technically our collection plan is supposed to be more focused to Pennsylvania. Um, but multiple generations prior to us was accepting anything railroad related. So one of the things that we're actually looking for right now, is we're actually having a distinct collection plan and almost putting out feelers for these items. We don't have really anything on women's history in trains, and there's a lot to unpack about women's history in trains, like women attendants on trains. Part of their uniform was go-go boots for a really long time. And so we're right now we're looking for train attendant go-go boots. So like you wouldn't think of that being something at a railroad museum, but that's part of the industry that you kind of have to tap into, um, eventually. And then I see we've got another question. What is your favorite thing about your job? Oh, that's a hard question. I will say, if you can't tell already, I love my job. I am a storyteller by nature, and so I love being able to preserve and tell other people's stories. My favorite medium in doing that is either through talking with people or through video. So I am actually working on starting up an oral history. Um, archive as a part of our archives and interviewing people who have railroad experience or have been influenced by the railroad, whether that's family members, they did it themselves, they knew somebody who did it, they had a train going through their backyard, something like that. Because I find that people are more willing to listen to someone who's telling them an engaging story or from a first person perspective versus me telling you their story. I like to think I'm entertaining enough that people would listen to me. Um, but at the end of the day, I do like to try to get the first person as well. So, favorite item in the collection. Um, ooh. That's also a good question. We have some really beautiful paintings. So I am an art nut. I honestly thought I was going to work in an art museum. I never was a trained person, did not think I was going to end up here. I saw the job position for archives and I jumped on it, which is how I ended up here. And I wouldn't change it for the world. But because of that, we have a John Singer Sargent painting in our collection because John Singer Sargent did one. We have all the Pennsylvania Railroad president portraits. Every single president of the Pennsylvania Railroad had their own presidential portrait, as high and mighty people do. They have money, they can get painted. One of them chose to get painted by John Singer Sargent before he was the John Singer Sargent. And it's the most gorgeous painting, even though the man is like straight faced in it. It's a gorgeous painting. I love it to death. It's either that one or we also have almost the entire collection of a local artist named Griff Teller. If you've ever seen a Pennsylvania license plate that's got a train on it, Griff Teller is the artist who painted that license plate. That license plate is based off of his painting. And we have those paintings and those original paintings. We also have his entire studio set up as well, with his last painting that he never finished. He passed away before finishing it. And so we have his studio set up as if he kind of just walked away, which I really love that. Tell us more about women's history on trains and about reading on trains. Ooh, there's not much that we know about women's history, sadly, on trains. Two of the biggest things that we know, and one of the things that we're actually working on researching, um, is women who took over roles for their husband during World War II, World War I and World War II. A lot of women stepped up to be mechanics and engineers. This is where you get your Rosie the Riveter, and working on this kind of heavy machinery. Um, and their stories were not told, their stories were not preserved, but their stories are just as important. Um, we have an awesome picture in one of our interactive exhibits. Um, Elizabeth is her name. She's still alive, actually. She lives in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm working on trying to interview her at some point. But she was a railroad engineer and she took over for her husband once he got injured. Um, and so there's countless stories like that. There's not a lot of literature on them, sadly, but we're hoping potentially maybe that there's a female rail fan historian out there who will do it. Um, if I learn enough, maybe that'll be me, but I don't think so. But I would love to see those materials materialize. Are all the materials obtained through donation, or does the museum ever purchase materials from private collections? Great question. We try to do everything through donation, but we have made purchases in the past. So the start of our collection was almost all through purchase. In the 70s, Amtrak, SEPTA, and I think Conrail, and I think Pennsylvania Railroad did massive auctions of like all their stuff. It was like a Black Friday, everything must go sale. Um, and at the time, it was frowned upon the state buying artifacts. So they sent in a state employee undercover to bid on our behalf, and we got, I don't know how many thousands of pieces. Most of our rolling stock is from that auction. Most of our collection, our big pieces from the collection, are from those, is from that time. Now we usually just do through donation, but we have made purchases in the past. We recently just made a purchase for a drawing. It's an original drawing of our 1923 turntable from its original location in Altoona, PA. We thought that that was necessary to have, and the guy didn't want to donate it. He wanted money. So we're like, okay, let's see if we can come to a deal here. How is the decline of freight rail depicted in museum displays? Is there a cutoff here, or do you have objects from currently operating freight companies? Um, that's a good question. Our We kind of have like three sections. We've got early steam locomotives, mid steam locomotives, diesel, diesel electric, and modern day locomotives. Um, so you do get to kind of see the progression of time through different types of locomotives, different types of cars as well. We have passenger cars, freight cars, hopper cars, refrigerator cars. We have one of the only restored refrigerator cars, which is really cool. Cabooses. We have a snowplow. That's pretty cool. You don't see those every day. We have the president of the Western Maryland Railroads presidential suite car. Um, so we don't really have like a cutoff year. Um, the main ones that are still operating are Conrail and Norfolk Southern. Conrail has kind of started to merge with Norfolk Southern at this point. We have a simulator, a cab simulator, a bad cab simulator, that is the cab of a Norfolk Southern locomotive. That's probably the most modern we have. Um, Most of our locomotives stop in like the 90s, early 2000s. Do you feel your interest in train history has grown since working in this position, or does your passion lay more in dealing with collections? Do you think you need to be an expert in a certain topic of collections that you are working in to work effectively within the collection? Great question. Um, I had no interest in trains at all before this. Um, I wouldn't call myself a train enthusiast at this point, but I appreciate them. I've really grown to appreciate them, and the stories that they hold. My true passion's definitely with dealing more with collections or stories or the stories of the locomotives themselves, versus equipment. Um, I kind of compare it being like for there you have your war historians who are focused more on the social or economic or the people section of war periods and times, and you have your war historians who are focused solely on like military strategy or artillery or like the machinery part of it. Um, I would say it's the similar thing with train history as well. You've got your machinery enthusiasts and you have your social history enthusiasts. I definitely fall more in the social history side of things. Um, but as far as needing to be an expert in a certain topic in collections, honestly, don't be an expert. That's probably one of my best pieces of advice because the more open-minded you can come with a collection, the more you learn about the collection because you need to learn. If you're coming into a collection that you already know everything about, it's going to become a brain-numbing experience at some point. You really, in my opinion, every day is like a Scooby-Doo scavenger hunt, that we say in the collections department. We're just the Scooby-Doo gang solving mysteries left and right, and that makes the job fun. Finding out things that we don't know about. Currently, we're going through a photograph collection, and this guy traveled all across the world, taking photos of different Baldwin locomotives, and now it's our job to try and identify where in the world he was at this time. It's been so much fun. And it's not train related, it's just pure mystery. And I think that's awesome. Um, a joke I would say as part of working at the Railroad Museum is that they don't want train enthusiasts working at the museum because they will be so obsessed with the artifact that no preservation, interpretation, or education will actually get done. And I have seen that happen before. So yeah, definitely just if you can show that you know what you're doing, you're excited to work and you have ideas, people will hire you. People want that kind of enthusiasm coming into their archive. Are there any other overlaps with military, social, business, labor, history, activism? Yes. So we have, so being part of the PHMC, we can do inner loans and everything like that. So right now the military museum is under renovation, so we have one of their military jeeps and one of their Gatling guns. Not something that you would think would be in a train museum. However, trains transported all of these materials during wartime. So that's how we can kind of connect them back to our locomotives. We're making more of a move to talk more about social and business and the economics and the people surrounding locomotives. But for almost 50 years now, it's been primarily just like machinery locomotive focus of here are the stats on the train. And some people love that, but we're trying to appeal to more people than just that, for sure. Okay, I think I've caught up on questions.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, these everybody's questions, thank you. These are fantastic questions that I didn't even think of during my little prep here. I do have one or maybe one or two
Yeah,
relating to, you mentioned the PHMC. For those who don't know, the PHMC stands for the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission. It's like the statewide governing body for historic sites, museums, archives, etc.
yeah.
My question is, I also noticed that the Railroad Museum is an affiliated institution with the Smithsonian and it also is a subsidiary of the PHMC. I just was wondering what your thoughts were on museums that have a backing of large scale state slash nationally funded organizations and how that affects the museum as a whole.
Yeah. So it's a catch-22, honestly. I'll talk a little bit more about the state side first. Being branded as a state site, people believe that we have more money and more power to do more, and we don't. Our hands are tied in a lot of areas. Like, I can't start my oral history program until PHMC Legal signs off on the gift agreement, of basically a waiver for people to sign to do these oral histories. And so, like, I sent that back in January, and I'm still waiting to hear from them. Or, like, the Pennsylvania state budget hasn't been passed. So, we have been operating without a budget since July 1st, 2025. Um, and so at some point, our money will run out. And when I mean our money will run out, that means the salary allotment for our director, for our curators, for our educators, they will not be allowed to come into work because the state can't pay them. And if the state can't pay them, then I can't go into work. And it's a butterfly effect. So that is part of the downside of working for a state museum. I will say if you get into a state museum benefits are fantastic. Working for the state or being part of a government contract does have a lot of benefits for salary, representation. We do have a union as well that fights for annual increases in salary, which is awesome. Um, Sadly, I'm not a part of that yet, but this is a step to that direction. Basically, my position where I am now, my next step will be state curator once the state curator decides to retire. So if you're looking at getting into some kind of state agency, start on the society of things if it's a split museum, and you'll work your way up. That's the easiest way to try and get into some of these state historic agencies. Um, Now to talk about the Smithsonian affiliation. I Poof. So here's my hot take. So you have to pay to be a Smithsonian affiliate. It is not an award. You did not earn it. It does not mean you are a good museum. It means you have money to pay for a subscription, to have a fancy badge that says I am a Smithsonian affiliate. It's got its positives and its negatives. Positives, I will say, is it's a lot easier to get loans from the Smithsonian. We have two loans from the Smithsonian currently. One is the carriage car of the John Bull, which is probably one of the oldest steam locomotive in existence. as well as we have the Olamana, which is the Baldwin locomotive that all of Walt Disney's trains are based on. He actually ran this train when he was alive in California. It was one of his Imagineers trains, and he would go over and he would run it in his friend's backyard. And he's like, "Oh, this train I want for all of my sites." And that's why all trains look the same. All trains are Baldwin for Disney, and they were all manufactured in Philadelphia. So that is a plus side. Getting loans and the paperwork is a lot easier when you're an affiliate because you get your own rep um, versus having a general rep. A general loan rep you get nowhere with. A personal rep, you actually can get your paperwork done and everything can be nice and square. Um, but other than that, some museums will have this affiliation, but they don't actually uphold to Smithsonian standards. That is where I'm like, you have to be really careful when looking at some of these collections that say they're part of the Smithsonian Network, because they don't always hold to Smithsonian and national standards. So that's definitely a case by case basis, but it's very interesting. And we do get a lot of both good and bad press for being affiliated with them.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, Kelly, again for joining us this evening. We've just reached about an hour's mark here. I'm going to send in the chat Kelly's various socials and recent career achievements and other links relating to the Railroad Museum for anyone who is interested, as well as our source website for anyone who is not on the email list. The instructions are right on the opening page of our website. A recording of this should be available on our website as well, which we'll probably have to you sometime this week for anyone who may miss it or wants to share it with someone else. And for upcoming announcements, we hope to have our meetings. We plan to have our meetings on Monday nights at 6 p.m. and they should be around the third or fourth Monday of the month. So our next confirmed meeting is October 20th, and we will be meeting with Kayla Doyle from the Liberty Hall Museum located in Union, New Jersey. And then most likely on November 17th, we will be meeting with Michelle Childs from New England Archivists and Providence College. Those will be our next two meetings. We may have a fourth, but we will communicate that as that comes about. But other than that, I just want to thank Kelly again for coming on and speaking to some of all of us students and faculty here at Rutgers, and wish her the best of luck going forward. And hope everyone has a great night. And if you have a free weekend, go visit the museum. It's about an hour and a half away from Central Jersey if you are in that area. I would recommend it. Like, there's awesome. And the museum is awesome. And we send Kelly an email, and she'll give you a tour or something like that.
Yeah,
So, um,
absolutely.
yeah. So thank you everyone for joining tonight and coming on for a listen. So we look forward to hopefully seeing you in our next meeting, and wish you the best of luck throughout this school year. Thank you.